Hello everyone, welcome to day one of the PGR Antwerp Major CSGO DFS Slate breakdown. I'm going to try to keep these videos a little bit shorter than I typically do, so just get straight into the info and hopefully cut out a lot of the BS that hopefully you guys don't care about. Maybe you do, I'm not sure. Let me know if you care one way or the other. Just give me any feedback you guys can give and I'll appreciate it. So hopefully you guys already understand the CSGO DFS, because if not, then probably going to be speaking a little bit of a different language for you, but we can get straight into it. So the only things to note really here is that these matches are best of ones. So it is just going to be one map that pretty much just ramps up the volatility to an extremely high level. It's just something to keep an eye out for. I don't think it changes a lot, but it's just something where we can probably open up the player pool a little bit more, try to take some of the more volatility things into account, and then kind of move on from there. So, the second thing as well is, for some reason they only did 6 games despite there being 8 games on day one. For some reason they just randomly chopped Fours versus Renegades and then Imperial versus Team Spirit. So if for some reason you are here wanting a little bit of a breakdown on those games, those will not be happening. We're just focusing simply on the DFS stuff here. So game one, complexity, vitality. Here we go. So I brought up the player stats already. That way we can kind of, again, get this going a little bit. From the last month, I've talked about this many times before, but the reason I'd like to just look at the last month is because CSGO, so day to day, a lot of these things matter a lot more with how a player's feeling it and their emotions and that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm keeping the sample size a little bit short here. So obviously, Vegas odds, we have vitality minus 415, complexity plus 295. Quick thoughts on this one. I do think this is a little bit closer than it looks. I think vitality is still getting continuously overrated, honestly. They have been bringing it back a little bit, but I mean, I still think I think Vitality are overrated. I'm gonna like picking against them pretty consistently. I think here going forward, I don't think they've really shown a lot in terms of really putting their throat down, or putting their like foot down on the enemy throw and really being like lethal with it. I think they bleed a lot of rounds, and that's something we really don't like for DFS. For this matchup, I think the skill disparity is just a little bit too wide. I think Vitality is going to be a pretty decent team. I still rate them pretty highly. I just think in general they're overrated. I think this was a little bit closer than it looks like, but I'm not willing to take the other side with the complexity side. Granted, they are really cheap. Grim, Junior, and Floppy, as we could see, Junior's at 5.4, Grim and Floppy are in the 6K range. I think they can get there enough to warrant going on the complexity side. But I think either way, I'm probably just going to be leaning on the Vitality fade and kind of thus leading to a fade of this game overall. Again, I think Vitality win, but I think it's going to be a somewhat close score. And I feel like Vitality kind of come out the gates pretty slow usually. I could see them having like a comeback win sort of game one, and that really doesn't lend itself to being that great for DFS. I think they are fine. I think you're probably going to want maybe some Zywoo, some Dupree in like a cash game build. I'm just going to not get there. I think typically when I'm talking about these games, I'm talking from pretty much my perspective, but I'll mention as much as possible. I like to just build one to three lineups, usually with just one. I like to put them in the single entry stuff and kind of let it ride in a way. And I'm just leading the fade. If anything, the only exposure really I'd get to this game would be like a cheap complexity player, and that's is if I really like the rest of my lineup, and I'm ending down in like the 5.5K, and I can put in a Junior, I'd be fine with that. I think he's a pretty good individual player. Again, best of one, super high volatility. I could definitely see somebody like Junior having a pretty good game and putting up a decent score, and maybe you'll need the salary savings that he can provide. But overall, kind of fading this one, not loving a lot. Second series or game, I guess I should say, we have Bad News Eagles against Eternal Fire. So this game did open pretty much as a pick'em, but it has gone down to Eternal Fire being the slight favorite. I do think that makes a little bit of sense. I think I talked about that in my preview video when I talked about this game. Um, I think this game is pretty close, but I think overall Eternal Fire's scores and stuff, they've been pretty decent. There's just a pretty strong individually talented team, and that's something that really shows a lot when it comes to putting up decent DraftKings scores. So I do like getting to some Eternal Fire, but I'm I'm just not sure. I'm not an ownership guy. I never claimed to be. I never claimed to know a lot about that kind of stuff, but um, I think they're probably going to be pretty popular. I think people like to play these players typically. Hopefully, people overlook them a little bit. I'm not entirely sure, but based off of like how we've seen these players play, we obviously like to focus pretty much Xantares, then Woxic, xCloud, and Calyx are kind of the same at the moment with how they've been playing, and then Emor is kind of all the way down by himself. If we look at the pricing, Emor is extremely overpriced. Woxic, Calyx, and xCloud are all pretty cheap. Even Xantares up at 8.4. I think it's fine to get these Eternal Fire guys. I think that I like the side for them a little bit. I just am not that high on Bad News Eagles. I think they had a pretty cool run. Being from Kosovo, a pretty small country. I believe it's like a combination of countries. I'm not sure. Probably just ignorant saying that, but not a lot to love, I think, from B&E. I do not like the prospects that B&E have. I think Eternal Fire are just a little bit better. I feel like the Cinderella story that B&E have had is probably going to come to an end. I think they're probably a 0-3 candidate for me. And I just think Eternal Fire, while they're probably middling overall in the whole group, I think they're doing pretty well in this game. I like the Eternal Fire chances. I think they're pretty cheap. I would like to load up on some of those guys. I think xCloud is simply mispriced this cheap. Calyx, Woxic, Xantares, I feel like all four of those players are very playable. When it comes to roster construction, I'm not sure. Honestly, I'd probably like to get as many games as possible, but that also is kind of unnecessarily risky as well. I don't see a reason to 3-stack. I would probably like to 2-stacks, maybe do like a 2-2-2, maybe a 2-2-1-1, 1-1, I guess. Or sorry, like a 2-2-1-1. I'm not sure. I'd like to mix and match a lot of the top players. I'd like to get as many good players as I can in. So Xantares at 8.4, maybe throwing in somebody like xCloud at 5.2 makes them really cheap. I really like the Eternal Fire side in that one. The next one is Team Liquid versus G2. So we have not seen a lot from G2 as of late, but I think overall the expectations from these games and this team, it's going to be pretty interesting. I think this overall odds-wise, they do have G2 minus 210. I think that's a little steep. I do think G2 are the better team. I do think they are the deserved favorite here. I'm going to close these. We'll keep them open, I guess. I think these stats are a little bit misrepresentative of kind of what they've been doing. So I think, whoops, that's interesting. Team Liquid, they've been playing back in North America, beating up on some bad North American teams. Nothing too crazy there. G2, they've just not been playing much. They just played the qualifiers and that was it. So I do like the G2 boys, specifically Nico and Hunter. I don't know. I said it like that. I don't like Monasi at the moment. I do think, again, he is an extremely talented player. I do love the prospects for him going forward. He is the second youngest player at the whole tournament. He just turned 17, which is crazy to think about. I believe the player from 9Z, nope, not 9Z, IHC. Yeah, IHC Techno. He's just under 17, just beat out the player Monasi for youngest player, but expectations for Monasi much higher. I think G2 do probably get the job done here, but I think this is pretty close. I could definitely see either team winning this. I think these are the two top teams in the group, and I like G2's prospects to go 3-0, but I think this is going to be a tough task. I think these are two really close teams. If I'm picking a side, I might just say Team Liquid would maybe be like the little bit better one. Although the upside that G2 have is also pretty crazy as well. I'm honestly just not sure on this one. This one's pretty tough. I do think the playing either side of this one is pretty good, because I do think there are two bad players on each team. I think Jackson, Alexi B, and then Nitro and Jacques are all pretty relatively worse than everyone else in the lobby. So they can feed some good amount of kills to the upper echelon players like Nico Hunter, Nafalij, OC. I like Team Liquid. I think these are actually two top 5 teams, as maybe a hot take as that is. I think this is two really good teams. I think you probably want a side of it, and I think overall the price is a little misaligned. So I think the value is a little bit on the Liquid side, although I definitely could see Nico and Hunter putting up some good numbers as well. We've talked about a lot of value so far. We've liked Complexity cheap. We've liked Eternal Fire cheap. So maybe pairing them up or getting some of those other names mentioned with somebody like Nico and Hunter makes a lot of sense to me. But for now, I think I like the G2 or the Team Liquid value side as well. OC at 62, NAF, Alige in the 7s at 7 and 7.8 respectively. I think those make a lot of sense. But if I'm going G2, it's going to be Nico Hunter. If I'm going Team Liquid, it's Alige, NAF, and OC. And then if we go to the next one, we have IHC against Astralis. This was a pretty interesting one coming up. Astralis, one of the biggest favorites here on the slate. I guess they actually are the biggest favorites. I thought Ents would be a little bit bigger, but not much to say here. IHC are not very good. They're just not outclassed here, honestly. It's all it comes down to. I'm not playing any IHC. I do like getting some Astralis in. As we could see, Farley, Blame F, 2 really big keys. I think this is going to be a really strong spend up options. Farley, 8K, super affordable. Probably get him into a lot of lineups. Blame F at 10.4. It is a price. It's a pretty steep price, but I think the consistency and safety he can bring is pretty crazy as well. I would like to sprinkle in some config. I think at 9.2, his upside we've seen in a lot of games has been pretty crazy. So far from other matches in the past, we've seen a lot of quality stuff coming from config, and his numbers aren't backing it up quite yet, but we know his upside is there. So it's a lot of what it comes down to. I would like some sprinkle him in, but I like loading up Blame F, Farley, maybe some config, but everyone else is going to be a no. Not going to get any IHC, no Glaive or Zipex for me. We have seen some spike performances from Glaive, but I think it's consistency and it's just not worth getting there, in my opinion. The next one up is the Outsiders versus Mibr series. As we could see, Outsiders minus 220, Mibr plus 165. I would like to say that this one's pretty tough, honestly, in my opinion. I think mainly what it comes down to is I think overall Outsiders are definitely the better team. We obviously expect very highly from Outsiders. Formerly known as Virtus Pro, of course. Don't want to get into all that at the moment, but this team is pretty strong. The problem is they are pretty inconsistent as well. I think they show high highs, they show low lows. I just have problems with specifically how Yakinder's been playing lately. Now, if we check the numbers at the moment, he's still decent, I think. Yeah, not really. He's the 4th best player on his team. And if they want to do anything, he has to be one of the best too. He has to be up there with James. Granted, Yakinder is playing the hardest role in the game. He is the can opener, so to speak. He is the first person to go in, which typically leads to really bad stats. But that hasn't been the case so far in Yakinder's career. He's been one of the best players in the world while playing the most difficult role. They just need more from him. That's really what it comes down to. But I think overall the highs are pretty high for Outsiders. The lows are pretty low. And I think Mibr also presents something where they have a lot of volatility of their own. So if, for example, Outsiders have a bad day and Mibr have a good day, I think it's definitely very viable that we see Mibr perform well. These odds, Outsiders minus 220, those seem a little steep to me. I would probably have it a little bit closer. But I think we could definitely, this could be a scenario where Outsiders just smoke Mibr. And I would not be shocked either. If we see Mibr smoke Outsiders, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked either. So similar to how G2 and Team, or maybe not similarly, I shouldn't say that. So for example, G2 Team Liquid are priced very similarly. That's minus 210. This Outsiders is minus 220. I just think overall G2 and Team Liquid are both really strong, both relatively consistent. I just think that series or that map is a lot closer than it looks. Mibr Outsiders, there's just a lot of question marks, a lot of volatility on both sides. So I'm going probably with the Outsiders team as much as as much as I just kind of talked badly about them. I think they are really cheap. They're going to be extremely popular, specifically Jame and Flit. Those would be the top two I would like to get to. Maybe you could argue somebody like Kickard at 6'6" is not the worst either, although his upside seems rather limited. I would definitely just want to lock and load on some Jame. Maybe mix in some Flit, but again, somebody like Yakinder, his upside is extreme. We've seen it in the past. I don't know if he's had anything recently. I guess maybe he has like a +9, +8. Like we see some really, really strong maps from him. So I would like to mix in some Yakinder as well. His price is expensive. It doesn't really warrant it that much, but I'm fine going there. I like mixing in some Yakinder. Yakinder is in the same vein as Config for me. He's a extremely volatile player, but if his highs are high, which we know they are, his upside is there, and I like mixing in some of him as well. The final match here is extremely one-sided in the odds-wise, and I would have to agree. Ent is -625 over 9Z. Just extreme talent disparity here. As good as the numbers have looked for 9Z, again, they're playing against much lower competition. While Ents have kind of slowly risen, they've beaten a lot of strong teams here. I believe they're HLTV rank 3rd, maybe 4th. I think they're 4th in the world at the moment. It's hard to argue with the reasoning why they've been playing extremely stellar lately. In terms of getting to them on DK, I just think this one's a little tough. I do think as they are a really big favorite, I just think this is a scenario where they have too many mouths to feed. It could kind of be anyone. I don't like Xing them out necessarily. But as we could see, like, although Spinks has kind of separated himself from the rest, we're talking about best of ones here. The times that Spinks is going to outperform everyone compared to like his value or his salary here, it's just not very high. I would like to maybe mix in a little bit more of the other guys, like maybe Hades, Madden, Diha, maybe even Snappy, although that's a little tough to get to at that price. There's just some other things I'd like to do instead. I would say most likely, generally speaking, I'm probably just going to avoid Ents. Although I do think they do get the job done. I just think this is one where there's too many mouths. It's going to be a little bit too hard to predict. Again, I wouldn't want to X them out necessarily. Like, we've seen some really spike performances, especially from players like Spinks and Diha. Hades has had some here and there. I don't think Madden's had that many crazy individual spike matches, although maybe I could be wrong. He went pretty crazy against Heroic. That's a really strong +23. He's had some pretty strong individual maps, so maybe even mixing him here as well. But now that, I just said it, I just lifted off 4/5 of the Ents roster as having extreme upside. I think if there's a little bit more of a balanced game, we could definitely see some poor performances from the Ents guys. I don't think it's that bad if you get maybe two of these guys. Maybe there's a world where you flip it and go the other way, and you say, you know what, a lot of these Ents guys do have really strong individual upside. What if we just played 3 of them and hope that they all 3 have pretty strong games? They win the series, or they win the map like 16-2 or something, like they dominate the game, and 3 of them have pretty good scores. There's some possibility there. I think that's fine. If you're doing a risky strategy that way, I would prefer just to go with the fade as opposed to the like load up on them. I think you're gonna have to make a decision here because they are gonna be pretty popular. I think. I'm just gonna go elsewhere. I would prefer going to like Astralis because I think there's more condensed kill share. We see a lot more from Farley and Blame F as opposed to the kind of 4 or even 5 names they have on Ents. So yeah, that kind of wraps up what I'm looking at for in this one. We'll kind of go a quick recap and run through here. So complexity, vitality, pretty close, but I like to lean towards vitality, but overall probably just going to fade this one altogether. Eternal Fire, Bad News Eagles, probably just going Eternal Fire. I think there's a lot of value there on that side. I do think B&E is not a terrible option in terms of getting a little bit different. Going somebody like Monflatro, maybe GXX even at 6K makes a lot of sense. But overall, I'm just not going to get there. I like the upside that Eternal Fire have individually a little bit more. Team Liquid G2. This might be the spot where I load up on some G2. I'm not sure if people are going to end up getting there. But I think with a lineup construction that I have in my head, I'm going to want to get a lot of different series, I think. It's going to be pretty risky. I think overall, if you're doing like cash or single entry, you realistically should be doing like 2-2-2 because you don't need to get too many spot performances. But I'd like to get as many elite players in my lineup as possible. So I'd like to get to Nico. But if you want to go on the Team Liquid side, I think there's a lot of viable options here. I think Nico, Hunter, Elige, Naf, and OC are all very live. I realistically probably should be going on the Team Liquid side, but I've picked a little bit too many underdogs and a little bit too many flyers. So I feel like I want some level of like quote unquote security here with G2, but I'm not sure on that one. I'll just say that's a 50-50. G2 are pretty big favored. I might, you know what? Scrap everything I just said. I'll just go with Team Liquid. I think I've talked myself into it a little bit here. Hearing myself speak, I think it just makes a little bit too much sense. I think we have seen a lot of upside from these Team Liquid players, Elige, Naf, OC. I think it's going to be a close series. I like the upside, and I think this is going to be a good one for sure. I could definitely see maybe even some overtimes, although that's asking for a lot. I like that for sure on the Team Liquid side. IHC Astralis, love Astralis, Far League Blame F, a little bit of config. That'll be it from that one. Outsiders MIBR, pretty similar. I think I like Jame Flip, maybe a little bit of Ukinder. That'll be it. 9Z Ents, I don't mind getting to Ents, although it's not my priority of mine. If I end up with like a little bit of salary and want to get a little bit of safety in there, I'll put in some Ents, but I'm not loving either side of that either. So that'll be it for me today. Hopefully you guys managed to get a little bit of info and idea about this one from me, and that'll be it. I will see you guys tomorrow. I think we'll have a similar slate of games tomorrow. So hopefully we can learn a little bit from today and put it into tomorrow, and I will see you guys then. Best of luck.